Hi Amy, and welcome to this edition of Ascential Experts.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So let's start with you giving us a quick rundown of what your role is at WARC.
Yeah, sure. So I am the managing editor of research and rankings. So half of my role is working on mostly survey-based research for WARC. So that's things like the marketer's toolkit and the future strategy reports. So it's internal survey-based research and also with partners. And then the other half of my role is on the WARC Rankings, which we're working on at the moment. So it's a pretty busy time for us right now.
So what's new this year for the rankings?
So one thing we have added this year is a methodology change. So the way we select shows each year is that we send out a survey and creatives and strategists globally fill it out, and they tell us what their priorities are in terms of the shows that they're entering, which are the most prestigious and rigorous, and they rank them. So we take that data, but we've also added this year an advisory board. So we have 23 senior executives from agency networks, and we've spent the last few months talking to them, getting their perspectives on what they value from the rankings, what they're using them for, but also the shows that they're entering, the shows that they're perhaps not entering, and using that to kind of validate which shows we're including in the rankings. So getting their industry perspective, not just our perspective on that methodology. So we've brought that in this year, and that's the one new thing, and it's really important for us to be able to maintain our kind of independence and remain impartial. So our objectivity and our impartiality is really important when it comes to these rankings, because they are seen as really important especially by the agencies. So we need to really maintain that independence.
And if I could kind of ask a bit pointed question about that, obviously at Ascential, Cannes Lions is, right alongside
Absolutely,
WARC. I think they're in the same building as you.
Yeah.
How do you really make sure that you're impartial when you're so closely associated now with such a big event within that environment?
Definitely. It has been brought to the forefront of things since WARC has kind of been owned by Ascential, and we do get that question from our clients, and I think part of it, as I said, is this advisory board. Part of it is really making sure our methodology is as clear as possible to people. So that we've really tried hard this year to both distill our methodology down so that people are really aware of the steps that we go through to kind of put the rankings together, but also guiding them to the fact that our really in-depth methodology is also available on the site. But going through the whole process, the advisory, the methodology discussions, the putting together of the rankings, is all very much a WARC thing. It's the one part of the kind of the content that I work on that we're not collaborating with anyone else on, because it is so important. So it's our one kind of non-collaboration piece, I think, each year.
And without being too flattering, the rankings have become quite a big hit. What is it that you think is building momentum and appreciation for them?
Well, I mean, brands and agencies love to shout about their success, particularly agencies. If they've come high in the rankings, it's a great PR moment for them, but it's also a really great way for them to benchmark. So part of these the advisory conversations we were having with the networks was about how important these rankings are to them, and they're using them internally to benchmark themselves against their own goals, but they're also using them to benchmark themselves against their competitors, to look for talent, to look for clients. And brands are increasingly getting more involved in award shows as well. So it's important on both sides as this benchmarking tool for them. But yeah, definitely the PR moment of being able to say your top agency or top brand is definitely important as well.
Great. And you're in the privileged position right now that the rest of us aren't, where you have a good idea of what's in the rankings. without giving too much away, have you seen any common themes coming through this year?
This year has been a really, really good year for retail brands, and in particular fast food brands. So across all three of the rankings, fast food brands have done really well. We're actually this year producing a report that's looking at the key themes and the key trends across the big brand success moments. So looking at not just the brands that have done really well this year, but also over time. And we're trying to interview the CMOs behind those brands and also their agencies to identify common themes between them and what the kind of the habits of successful brands to see whether there are common themes between them. So we're going to be publishing that once the rankings have come out, and those interviews are taking place at the moment. So that will be a really interesting one to see. Those trends.
And we're now, a little bit into 2020 and thinking back to the Marketers Toolkit, which you worked on last year. Now we're a bit into 2020. What do you see, any emerging trends from a marketing perspective that you are starting to see accelerate? I mean,
based on last year's Marketers Toolkit, some of the things we're seeing that we were talking about in that toolkit coming through in some of the award wins. There's the importance of context when it comes to media buying. So with the death of the cookie and the kind of the impact that has on audience-based buying. We're seeing brands that are really using contextual marketing, winning awards. The other one is building brands in walled gardens and the challenge that there is in that, especially with the rise of Amazon, Tencent, Alibaba. The spend on those platforms is really increasing, and we're seeing brands using really innovative ways to market themselves on those platforms. So that's coming through in the rankings a little bit. I expect to see that a bit more next year as well. But the final thing, I guess, is something we talk about a lot at WARC, and it's that debate between short-term performance-based marketing and long-term effectiveness. And
that feels like it's turning around a bit, right?
It is turning around a bit, and that's one of the things we talked about in the toolkit. But the debate persists in award wins, and I think one great example that's been in the press in the past few days, obviously hasn't been in the rankings this year, but maybe next year, is Burger King's Mouldy Burger campaign. That's really divided opinion as to whether it's a campaign designed. It's a really creative campaign, but is it going to result in the sale of more burgers in the long term, or is it just something that's designed to gain attention in the short term, probably win some creative awards, but maybe not necessarily do that effectiveness piece? But we actually interviewed Fernando Machado a couple of days ago for the brand report that I was talking about earlier. And obviously he's of the perspective that it will result in long-term effectiveness, but he said that all of their campaigns are really measured in a really, really robust way. He said he wouldn't be in his job without that robust measurement. So it will be interesting to see actually over the next few years. Burger King have done really well over the past few years in the creative rankings, but haven't necessarily ranked quite so highly in effectiveness. So I think over the next few years it will be interesting to see if their effective ranking kind of matches up with that creativity in the next few years because of the lag between the two.
Whether the cumulative creativity adds up to brand building over time.
Exactly. So that'll be interesting to see.
Watch this space.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed.
No problem.